really great to have you all here. My name is Ciara May, and I'm a certified behaviour analyst working almost 25 years in the field of intellectual disabilities and behaviour support. And it's my great pleasure tonight to introduce Caroline Dench, who has been an inspiration to my work in the field, and I know to many, many others in Ireland. Caroline's an absolute leading light, both in the research area and in the training area, and in what I call the real work in terms of service delivery. My role in ISPA is as a founding member. My hope is to engender a kind and caring professional community that is supportive of one another and that really asks the highest standards of its members for the delivery of behaviour analysis for the improvement of the world around us and in Ireland in particular. Caroline has been doing that for decades now, and again is a leading light to me personally, and I know to many others in this area. Caroline's going to speak tonight in the area of multi-element behaviour support, and I've never come away from a talk with Caroline without feeling inspired and without learning new things. So I'm very excited that you're going to have a similar experience tonight. Introducing Caroline more formally, Caroline is a principal clinical psychologist and the coordinator of the Canon services with St. John of God's in Dublin, and also acts as an adjunct associate professor in UCD in the Centre of Disability Studies as part of the School of Psychology. She maintains an active caseload, providing assessment and intervention for individuals with behavioural support needs across St. John of God services. And Caroline designs and implements training systems for staff, presents at conferences, and has established many community of practice fora over the years. Caroline manages RUA, which is a service promoting relationships and sexuality for individuals with intellectual disabilities or autism, and has implemented school-wide positive behaviour support in several schools. With over 34 years of experience, Caroline has worked in the USA as a program administrator and a behaviour analyst, supporting children with emotional and behavioural disorders, autism, trauma, and intellectual disability. She lectures in academic and professional settings, is involved in research activities, and is a member of the IABA Research and Education Foundation. Caroline is a chartered psychologist with the Psychological Society of Ireland, and I know she has a huge amount to deliver us tonight, so I'm not going to delay any more, and hopefully at the end of our presentation we'll still have time to pick up on those questions that you may put into the chat, and please do share. Thank you very much. I'll hand you over to Caroline.
Thanks, Ciara. So Alan, I think I might share screen, and oh, you're going to do it. Okay. Thanks, Emil. Okay, well, lovely to be here. And Ciara and Alan, thank you for that very kind introduction. I think we're always walking on the shoulders of giants, aren't we? So today we're going to talk about the constructional approach, and there'll be some people's ears burning possibly, and the multi-element behaviour support model. So the objectives really for today, we'll go ahead there. Thanks, Alan. Just to acknowledge my colleagues, past and present in Callan Institute, St. John of God Community Services, you all know who you are. In particular, just to mention my colleague Gina Karlberg, who co-presented this presentation, a similar presentation to this with me in Chicago there last year to the Association of Positive Behaviour Support. And Gina, I think you're here with us this evening, so lovely to see you. And obviously the Institute of Applied Behaviour Analysis, so the work of Gary LaVigna, Tom Willis, and Anne Donovan. Thanks, Alan. So we're going to look at the constructional approach in the context of nonlinear contingency analysis and the non-aversive functional and non-functional reactive strategy. So these are two very unique components that nonlinear contingency analysis allow the MEBS model to actually make explicit. I'm hoping I'm going to give you maybe some insight into how these two principles increase quality of life in the context of co-production informed by social validity and organizational behavior management constructs, and how MEBS again implements and makes these explicit in the lives of individuals with intellectual disability and quality of life behavioral support needs. Any potential concerns related to these concepts, which we know behavioural science can highlight for us? I'd like to maybe talk about some of those and highlight how the nonlinear contingency analysis mitigates in those. On we go. So Goldiamond, a prolific scientist and writer working in the area of mental health, schizophrenia and dementia. He was a mentor to Gary LaVigna when Gary LaVigna was studying in Chicago, and to Joe Lang. He developed a constructional approach and nonlinear contingency analysis, which expanded upon traditional linear analysis. So we're going back to 1974, when Israel Goldiamond was doing these writings and these teachings, and also running labs using a constructional approach in the University of Chicago. Thanks, Alan. So MEBS as a constructional approach, Goldiamond contrasted construction approaches to pathological ones, which focus on reducing or eliminating behaviour patterns. And what's so unique about a constructional approach is it doesn't attempt to directly reduce behaviours. Now, for many of us who are positive behaviour support practitioners, we're thinking, well, we know that because positive behaviour support has as its primary outcome quality of life, and its primary focus is quality of life. So in the constructional approach, the behavioural support need is understood in the context of an individual's life situation and the options choices currently available to them. Now, this is a really important concept, the options choices, because I want you to hold the thought of alternate sets, because we're going to come back to that. On we go. So these concepts of building repertoires are increasing choice and improving quality of life. They're all held within 4 important guiding questions that aren't, they don't start in a linear way. And I suppose nonlinear is going to be another theme that I'm going to keep coming back to, obviously. But these guiding questions are what are actually underpinning the constructional approach. So where do you want to go? Where are you now? How will you get from here to there? And what will keep you going? Now, in scientific language, what are the desired outcomes? What are the current relevant repertoires? What is the sequence of change procedures? And what will be the maintaining consequences? So this is the kind of the premise that constructional approach is actually built on. Thanks, Alan. So the multi-element behaviour support is a structured and formal framework for behavioural support that's based on constructional approach and nonlinear contingency analysis. And the use of MEBS and the evidence for MEBS has been written about extensively, both within and between group designs. Thanks, Alan. This is the model, so this is the infographic, but obviously behind this model are skills, techniques, assessment booklets, structured interviews, semi-structured interviews, observation methodology, outcome measurements, mediator assessments. So this whole kind of infographic is supported by many, many resources. Thank you. And what's interesting is the constructional approach was written about in 74, and our colleague Anne Donnellan, who was again a wonderful clinician who recently passed away, she worked very closely with children, so autistic children, and developed what's called the intensive intervention sequence in 1984, 1985. And Gary and Anne worked very closely together in the context of developing the multi-element behaviour support model. And they were joined then by Tom Willis in the early 80s. And together, the multi-element behaviour support model was actually developed. Now, interesting, Carr didn't start about positive behaviour support until 1996. So this is interesting for us in Callan Institute because there's 11 years discrepancy between MEBS then and PBS. So MEBS, from Callan Institute's point of view, is a constructional approach of behavioural support. And over the last number of years, we know really, just from evidence, that MEBS articulates these 9 critical features of PBS, and many colleagues have gone on to develop those. So our colleagues in the UK have gone on to develop 12 core features of PBS. But we're all very familiar with these. But you can see that Carr is immediately talking about there is number 1, comprehensive lifestyle change and quality of life. So that's where Carr was actually starting from. And that's based on the work of Israel Goldiamond and Gary and Donnellan and our colleague Tom Willis. Thanks, Alan. So when we think about a constructional approach, it's informed by a set of valued outcomes. So in 1991, we all know John O'Brien's valued accomplishments. So again, these are very, very familiar with. You'll be very familiar with these. Many people maybe use different quality of life indices or different quality of life matrices. These are the ones that we use within MEBS. We've always used them, but some colleagues might talk about PERMA, some other colleagues might talk about another quality of life scale. But the point is, I suppose what I'm suggesting is that a reason for a request for support often starts with thinking about the behavioural support need. And one thing that I propose to you this evening is that we actually start with a quality of life probe as opposed to a behavioural support probe. Because if our focus, and if you're truly a PBS practitioner, then quality of life is your focus. And the symptom that you're being presented with is an indicator that something is a little bit off kilter. Thanks, Alan. So again, I'm highlighting two unique features of the MEBS model, the nonlinear contingency analysis and the non-aversive reactive strategy. So let's have a little look at these. So multi-element versus single element. Historically, behavioural support has been delivered through single element, and as a scientist practitioner, that is obviously to be recognised and is absolutely valid. When we move experimental design into application and the lived experience, things shift a little bit for us. And it was in this context that Israel Goldiamond really began to think about a constructional approach, and Gary LaVigna then went on to develop the MEBS model. So Cora's assumption of, the constructional approach and the MEBS model is that single interventions will have limited effects. So the multi-element behaviour support model is comprehensive and holistic. It increases quality of life both as a primary objective, but also a support strategy in its own right. So it's about an outcome measure and an input support. And again, that's another concept just to hold on to a little bit. All components of the MEBS model need to be present. It's not a pick and choose. So you can't just decide, I'll just use this of MEBS. If you're using the MEBS model, you are using the MEBS model. It is through the combination of MEBS components that its effects are exerted. So MEBS is very closely aligned to a human rights-based approach, and Israel Goldiamond would actually have talked about rights in the context of listening to individuals, their desired outcomes. And my colleague Christina, who many of you know, wrote a lovely paper in 2009 where she aligned the MEBS model to a human rights-based approach. And only recently there, a colleague, Erin Leaf there in Australia, has just written recently about this paradigm shift. And I suppose what we would be saying is that this has always been present within the MEBS model. And we recognise individuals that we support as rights holder in line with the UN CRPD. So let's have a look at the model a little bit and those four kind of questions that a constructional approach actually provides us. So Alan, some magic should happen if you click there. No magic is happening, is it not? Oh, sometimes the format changes. Okay, so with assessment, you're supporting the person to tell their story, and you're doing it in a way that the person is comfortable. So where are you now, and where would you like to go? This middle section, the behaviour support plan and the mediators, what do you think about this plan getting you to where you want to go? So that's kind of the middle section. And what will maintain it? These are the outcomes. So you can see the four questions of a constructional approach are actually based in these four different sections of the multi-element behaviour support model. On we go. Oh, there you go. There's our magic. Super. On we go. So co-production obviously is closely aligned to social validity, and everything that we do in the MEBS model is done with the voice and the will and preference of the individual supported, focusing on quality of life. The individual's own wishes and preferences are the centre of the model and the plan, And it's important to understand and support the individual to share their understanding of what is important to them, their understanding of their quality of life, their behavioural support need, and what support strategies they feel would help. So we know that social validity is one of the core principles. What's important to you? Do you like and agree with the plan? And can we do it? And is it working? That's little Mebby up in the corner. I'll talk to you about him in a little while. On we go. So when we think about social validity, we're thinking about it at these 4 different points in the MEBS model. So we're looking at it at assessment, we're looking at it at kind of plan, design and supports. We're doing it with mediators, so the individual and their stakeholders, and we're thinking about implementation and outcomes achieved. So social validity is it's quite a dynamic concept throughout the whole MEBS model. I wanted to just highlight social invalidity because this is going to come into play when we begin to look at alternate sets. So you see, I'm just kind of punctuating a couple of themes as we go through this. So we all know Baird described 1987 social invalidity as the behaviour of an individual supported and/or other who not only disapproves of some component of the ongoing programme, but are going to do something about their disapproval. So withdraw, complain, not implement, engage with the plan, or something else. So just hold those thoughts, because when we get to alternate sets and we think about decision-making and, making a choice, this is going to become relevant. So we mentioned that MEBS uses a holistic context, and this is unique to the MEBS model because MEBS looks back and considers the individual's lived experience in the context of the present. So what's happened? What's this person's story? How have they experienced joy, family, friendships, achievement, loss, meaning, quality of life, trauma, health? So what's this person's lived experience? Looking back, we look at the current situation. So what does the individual's life look like right now? So are they living in a place that they feel is homely and they would call home? Are they living with people that they love and that they care about? Are they able to express themselves and understand what's happening around them? How is their health, their physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and sometimes I'll add financial health in there as well. And what lights up their eyes when they're hopping out of bed in the morning? What are they thinking? Hey, today's going to be a great day. So what's MEBS? How does MEBS then celebrate current life situation and how do we capture that story? But MEBS then also looks forward with the individual as they explore their desired goals and their future and how to support these to be achieved. So what are they hoping for? What is their value direction? And you can see that holistic context has to be kind of supported through a collaborative relationship because we're going down the road of storytelling here. Thank you. So value direction, what's important to an individual and how do we know this and what evidence is there? And in the context of what choices, information and lived experiences. So we're all the time thinking about that, not just in their current lived experience, but also in maybe opportunities for further experiences so that we're actually broadening the tapestry of life so that people are actually identifying this is important to me from a range of experiences. So MEBS and nonlinear contingency analysis, you can see that already we're building an understanding of the person in the context of their quality of life. And the nonlinear contingency analysis is explicit in MEBS. And it contributes to a holistic understanding of the individual, which is at the heart of the MEBS model. So let's look at nonlinear. So we're all very familiar with linear. So the 3- and 4-term contingencies are called linear contingencies. So the discriminative stimuli, the behaviour, and the consequence. On we go. The function of the behaviour in a linear contingency analysis, it's derived based on the contingent relation between a response and its antecedent and consequence. Intra-contingency variables can obviously play a part where we've got motivating operations, schedules of reinforcement, etc. And in a linear contingency analysis, behaviours can be explained by the relationship and oftentimes through the consequence, through understanding the consequence. And I'm using consequence in a behavioral science definition. Thank you. So in nonlinear contingency analysis, we view behaviors in the context of several concurrent contingencies. Now, this is where it gets exciting, because while a linear contingency analysis focuses on the occasions and consequences of the behavior in question, a nonlinear contingency analysis takes the antecedents and consequences of each psychological event. So I'm tipping into Cantor's interbehaviorism here. So it takes the antecedent and consequences of each psychological event and the alternative responses into account. Okay, on we go. So to fully understand the function of behavior, we analyze what the consequence would be if the behavior did not happen. So why this behavior? Why this behavior now? Why not another alternate set? Why not another contingency? Why is that not present and this one is? So this is the idea of nonlinear, and the idea that actually contingencies can actually shift and move depending on repertoires available to the person. And that's the second part of this, is what possible consequences are there for all not yet available behaviors? Because sometimes within a person's repertoire, it could actually be limited. But if we then think about repertoires that have not yet to be developed, how then can we actually understand the behavior in the context of not yet developed or not yet available repertoires? Now we're getting into the heart of nonlinear contingency analysis. On we go. So we analyze what makes the stimulus, the discriminative stimulus, particularly potent. We analyze what antecedents do not result in this contingency. We analyze if there are other contingencies at play, and then we have nonlinear contingency analysis. So we need an example. Let's have a look. So in MEBS, the antecedent behavior consequent contingencies, they do play a role in understanding a behavioral support need. They absolutely do. However, we place ABCs in a broader context of the person's life story and investigate what other variables influence the ABC contingency. We also consider what other circumstances in an individual's life contribute to the presence and absence of not only this ABC contingencies, but also other possible or yet not available contingencies. So how does an NCA, a nonlinear contingency analysis, contribute to our understanding of quality of life, behavior, and support needs? On we go. So now we've got multiple intersecting contingencies. So we're not just thinking about this one psychological event. So Cantor talks about a linear kind of analysis as a psychological event. And Israel Goldiamond is saying, and Cantor and Israel Goldiamond, they happened around the same time, so they were kind of cross-pollinating a little bit. And Israel Goldiamond was saying, that's absolutely fine, but we have to think about the multiple intersecting contingencies and all of the different alternate sets. Now, this sounds so complicated, and I suppose what's so beautiful, I know, what's so beautiful is the MEBS model has simplified it. And for many, many years, we haven't actually articulated Israel Goldiamond's work, probably for this very reason, because maybe, you know, we're thinking, oh, Caroline, geez, so what do we do with all of this? So when we actually look at the multi-element behavior support model, it has articulated all of these concepts so beautifully that in actual fact, over the years, we've actually found it hard to, and I'm saying even myself, to actually explain it. So I'm hoping here this evening that by looking at this and then by going back to the MEBS model, that it will come together for you. So on we go. So this is the model again, and we're going to look at, if you hit there again, Alan, something magic should happen. Yep. So we're just going to look at the plan. So we're not going to look at the assessment, mediation, and outcomes just for the moment. We're just going to look at the plan. Thanks, Alan. So the plan, if you notice there in the graphic, it has proactive strategies and it has reactive strategies. So the plan is actually developing alternate sets. And in the proactive strategies in the multi-element behavior support plan, the whole role of the proactive strategies they're designed to reduce the frequency of future occurrence. So the proactive strategies reduce the frequency of future occurrence. They constitute the majority of the MEBS plan, and they relate to well-being and quality of life as defined by both proximate and distal variables. So the proactive strategies, they all happen when everybody is calm, when everybody is in kind of comfortable places, relationships, and they're available. Thanks, Alan. So these are the proactive strategies in the multi-element behaviour support plan. And they're divided up into 3 categories. You have environmental accommodations, you have skills teaching and direct interventions. In a multi-element behaviour support plan, you will always have at least one environmental support. You will always have one of each of those 4 skills, and you will always have at least one direct intervention. So at a minimum, just in this part of the plan, there will be a minimum of 6 supports based on the person's story and those 4 questions that we've actually kind of highlighted. Thanks, on we go. The reactive strategies are designed to reduce episodic severity. Now, this is critically important because in a constructional approach, the proactive strategies are reserved for future effect, and the reactive strategies are reserved for situational effect. So the reactive strategies in the multi-element behaviour support model are free from thinking about any potential reinforcement or any potential likelihood that the behaviour will increase as a result of the response of the reactive strategies. Now, this concept can only really be understood within a constructional approach. And that's why the multi-element behaviour support model is so powerful in enabling reactive strategies that are functionally based and are non-functionally based, because they're not concerned with future effect, they're concerned with situational effect. The proactive strategies are concerned with future effect. And that's the power of alternate sets. On we go. So then what you can see is the multi-element behaviour support plan here. You've got your proactive strategies, and you can even just looking at the graphic, you can see 90% of the work has been done and 90% of the support is in the proactive strategies, and 8 to 10% of the support is in the reactive strategies. On we go. So let's have a look at Payan. So this is a hypothetical case study. So this is a vignette. And it's often nice just to kind of move these concepts now into a real practical example. So 19-year-old woman in a supported employment scheme, loves music, dancing, listening to stories, baking, has an intellectual disability, sensitive to noise and crowded environments. She thrives when she's able to spend time with people she likes, especially engaging in her hobbies. She's 4 siblings, all under the age of 12, and she shares a small home with them and her mum and dad. She loves spending time with her dad when he reads stories to her. On we go. She uses pictures and a touch talker, so she's non-speaking. At home, she spends all her time in her room and has dinner there. She does not like spending time in other areas of the house due to noisy and crowded conditions. Loves the garden. Due to many home responsibilities, it's hard for her parents to spend a lot of time with her. They bring her snacks to her room and intermittently check in on her briefly once an hour. Now, what's so interesting about behavioural support is Payan will be referred for behavioural support needs, not for quality of life needs. And I think this is a concept that we have to kind of explore a little bit, because when a request for support comes in, it'll be Payan's property destruction. But actually, when we're using the MEBS model, we actually are very interested in, as Payan, as a 19-year-old, where's she having fun? What's important to her? What does she value? How does she get along with her siblings? What does she like to do when she's at home? And sometimes when you start having a conversation like that, the people that you're meeting with think, no, we want to talk about her behavior. This is really problematic. So I think it's important that we're able to actually do a little bit more work here around behavioral support in the context of what it is and why it is, so that we're actually all aligned with when we start talking about what lights up Payan's eyes. And our parents are sitting there looking at you thinking, she's pulling the drawers out of her dresser and smashing them on the floor, and you want to talk about her quality of life. So so this is what happens, isn't it? The referral comes in, the request for support, and her mum and dad will go up to her room and they'll spend 15 minutes cleaning up. They'll sit down and kind of then spend time with her. A parent might say to her, stop throwing things. Why have you done this again? Now daddy has to clean up, which would be a very natural thing for a parent to say to their adult child. So you can see in a linear contingency analysis, we could almost hypothesize without necessarily doing any more scientific rigor what the function or what the message or what the reinforcing condition is here. So if we move on, I really like to spend time with mum and dad or my sibling in my bedroom doing things I like. Okay, on we go. So now let's play around with some contingency matrices. To fully understand and support complex behaviours, entire sets or matrices of contingencies need to be considered rather than focusing on one. So by extending our analysis in this manner, behaviours that intuitively do not make any sense make sense as the most rational choices available to the individual. On we go. So what would happen if Payan did not engage in the behaviour support need, and what are her other options? So do you see the way the construction approach now introduces alternate sets, and it asks the practitioner to think about why this, why now, and why not something else? Really important. I've just simplified nonlinear contingency analysis, I hope. So let's have a look. If she went downstairs, there would be noise and commotion, and she would observe parents spending time with her, but also attending to her siblings. So that's a potential contingency. Option 2, if she sits in a room by herself, she would be alone for the majority of the evening without significant social interaction. That's a contingency option. If she left the room and asked them, parents or siblings, to come and spend time with her, one individual would do this maybe once for 15, 20 minutes on average. So that's an option. Option 4, her current way of communicating that she wants to spend time with her parents results in 1 hour of time with them when they are in her room spending time with her, whilst she only gets 15 to 20 minutes of time with them otherwise. Okay, so now we've got some nonlinear contingency analysis. Move on here. So now let's think about degrees of freedom. So degrees of freedom is a really important concept in constructional approach, because constructional approach is based on choices and increasing alternate sets. So if we just look at these 4 options, and there could be lots more options, but just for the sake of this example, stay with me, we'll see that option 1, Payan's not going to choose that. We know that noise and crowds, we know that the routine in a house where people are coming in the evening and dinner's on and homework, Payan is saying, no thanks, I need to be in my room. So we know she's not choosing this. If she sits in the room by herself, she'd be alone. Well, that's counterintuitive when the message of her behaviour is, hey, I love spending time with people, but hey, can you do it up here where it's nice and quiet? If she left the room and asked them, maybe one of her siblings or one parent might spend 15 to 20 minutes with her and then leave. So when we look at this, we see that option 4, her current way of communicating, is really, really meeting her needs. So when we move on, degrees of freedom are available options to obtain the desired reinforcement -1. So when you've got one choice, which is option 4, and you actually use the statistical formula of -1, so 1 minus 1 means 0, which technically means Payan has actually no other option. She has no degrees of freedom in the context of meeting this need, or in behavioural terms, this reinforcement. On we go. So does she have genuine choice? So when we look at this in the context of genuine choice, and I'd like you to play with genuine choice a little bit, especially with the language of assent, because I think when we think about assent, we might have to put degrees of freedom into the context in this consideration. So Payan has 0 degrees of freedom. She only has one option, which is option 4, which means that after we've subtracted the 1, which is the statistical formula that Goldiamond has proposed and set out in his constructional approach, she has 0 degrees of freedom. Okay, crumbs. So on we go. So this shows that the behavior she engaged in was the most rational, and it was based on other available options to her. Behaviour support needs may be costly to the individual and therefore seem bizarre and counterproductive to others, but a nonlinear contingency analysis will always reveal that it is the most logical option. On we go. So constructional approaches focus on supporting the development of skills. So you've heard me talk about choice, you've heard me talk about alternate sets, you're now thinking about degrees of freedom. So we have to now create a matrix of contingencies that are going to be conducive for Payan, where she's actually going to say, I have got so many choices here. My life is brimming over. And when we do that, we're now looking at quality of life, aren't we? So what skills might help? So the answers can be found in examining the multiple contingencies. So on we go. So in the MEBS model, we're in the proactive strategies because we're looking at influencing the future effects. So we're in proactive strategies, and we know Payan likes baking. So we're thinking, how can we introduce a psychological event? I'm using Cantor's term, which would be another contingency, which would actually be reinforcing for Payan. Can Payan have the functionally equivalent skill? So basing on Karen Duran's work, can you come and spend time with me? A functionally related skill. So in a multi-element model, you'd never have a functionally equivalent without a functionally related. They're kind of partners in the tango. So could be around choice. What will we do together if we spend time together? Coping and tolerance skills. What is noise and why does it hurt my ears? Maybe a social story about my sensory needs. How and what do I think about noise defending headphones? How am I with doing hobbies by myself? And how much time do I like to be by myself before I kind of think, I'm a bit bored with myself now. So you can see that we're building up these skills in the context of creating alternate sets and increasing degrees of freedom. Thanks, Alan. The constructional approach also focuses on supporting the development of a capable environment. Now, there's been a lot written about capable environments recently by the colleagues here, and how can the environment be adapted to meet Payan's needs? And again, the answers can be found in examining the multiple contingencies. So in the MEBS model, thanks, Alan, there are 3 different ways that we can adapt the environment. We can do it through the interpersonal, the physical, and what we're doing in it, the programmatic. So here with Payan, we're looking at a plan for spending time and having company. We're thinking about a picture schedule. So Payan kind of knows the lay of the land, quiet areas within the home that maybe move around the home. So maybe the kitchen is quiet, maybe from 7:30 till 8, and maybe the sitting room is quiet from maybe kind of 6 to 6:30, so that there are quiet zones within the house. We can think about activities available and sampling. We can think about walks and the garden, because these are things that we've learned by examining the multiple contingencies. On we go. The constructional approaches focus on supporting an understanding of antecedents. Again, the literature is full of thinking about antecedents. So when and why are some antecedents more kind of present in a linear contingency, and how come sometimes the reinforcement can be met without the need for the contingency that we've actually referenced. And again, the answers can be found in examining the multiple contingencies. So let's have a look. So things to do when I'm on the bus, because we learned that sometimes Payan can be quite kind of dysregulated when she's hopping off the bus, coming in the evening. So how can we think about co-regulation on the bus? What do I do when I get home? So how can we actually think about that kind of transition piece? My seat in the garden, a quiet kitchen, a quiet sitting room. So you're seeing maybe some links between the environmental strategies and the direct interventions. So the direct interventions are they're very, very powerful because they're directly linked to the nonlinear contingency analysis. On we go. So now we're into the role of the reactive strategy in the MEBS model. So I hope I've set the scene for why the reactive strategy is released from future effect. But just let's have a quick look at it again. So we'll have a look at this, Alan. So in the MEBS model, reactive strategies and the commitment to the non-use of punishment, and I'm using punishment as a behavioural scientific definition there. So punishment is defined as a consequence which results in the reduced probability of the future occurrence of behaviour. But in the MEBS framework, we use resolution when we're responding or when we're using a consequence. So we use positive and negative resolution as a stimulus response for situational effect and the reduction of episodic severity. Because we're creating alternate sets, the consequence or the response in a linear contingency analysis is mitigated from reinforcement, and it is released from its responsibility to actually be concerned with reinforcement. On we go. So episodic severity, and the seminal paper in 2005 is a good read, is defined as the measure of intensity or gravity of a single behavioural incident. It's concerned with situational effect, so relationships, compassion, attunement, responding to the message, reducing episodic severity, and it is a dependent variable, and it can actually be a measured outcome. Okay. So MEBS reactive strategies are non-aversive and non-punishment based. MEBS reactive strategies focus on situational effects only, and MEBS proactive strategies are concerned with future effect. On we go. So counterintuitive strategies in MEBS, we would propose that they're actually intuitive strategies because the constructional approach has enabled them to be intuitive. We've often kind of spoken with Gary and Tom around, we don't need to call these counterintuitive anymore, thanks to Goldiamond. But if you were using a linear contingency analysis to a linear contingency analysis practitioner, you would be thinking, oh my goodness me, you've lost it. You can't use these. And I think when counterintuitive strategies were being kind of articulated, it was in the context of linear analysis. Whereas, so we're often, poor Gary, he'd often say, it's counterintuitive. And we said, well, no, Gary, no, Goldiamond would say these are now intuitive. Anyway, I'm digressing. So you can see that counterintuitive strategies are those events that otherwise serve as reinforcing events depending on the conditions. And that was the definition that was born with MEBS in 1985. But my goodness me, how many years on are we since 1985? And these would be some of the examples: strategic capitulation, stimulus chain, facilitative strategies, active listening. On we go. So in the multi-element model, our reactive strategies can be functionally based, non-functionally based, and they can also be functionally informed. So I could do a whole workshop on those as well, but we'll keep going. So when we think about a functionally based reactive strategy, it responds to the message or function of the behavior in that time or of the distress. It reduces episodic severity, and there's some lovely papers there, and all the references are at the back. You can have a look at them. On we go. So here's Pyan, and so the behavior is X. I want someone to spend time with me, please. The functionally based reactive strategy is Pyan. I am here. I am yours. But the question is, will the individual be able to enjoy the company? And if alternate sets are available and reinforcing, so in proactive strategies, if we've been facilitating maybe breathing to relax or a choice skill, those neurological pathways are being bedded down so that even when there's stress or the person is escalated and cortisol is beginning to flow, the proactive strategies practice make it more likely that the individual will actually co-regulate much more quickly with the functionally based reactive strategies. And this is why it's so important that the proactive strategies are implemented, because sometimes people will actually not maybe focus on the skills teaching. They'll focus on the environmental or the direct and actually leave out the skills teaching. But we'll get to that now in a little bit. So that's an example of functionally based. Non-functionally based is with preferred events. So we may not know the function, or we may not be able to respond to the function or to the message. So that happens in real time. So a non-functionally based reactive strategy can reduce episodic severity, but some nice research done by Crates and Spicer and Crates showed that this only happens about 48 to 50% of the time. So you can see the importance of nonlinear contingency analysis and reactive strategies that are functionally based. Okay, on we go. So we've Payam again. I'm nervous about my doctor's appointment. She's sitting in the waiting room. Non-functionally based reactive strategy. So the function is to express a desire to leave the waiting room due to feeling nervous about an important medical appointment. Now, obviously, that's an option, because if the distress is such and we would be responding functionally, we would say absolutely. But if we're thinking, we've been working on maybe mindful coloring, we've been working on breathing exercises. So Payam now is given a choice. Will we try our mindful coloring? Because we want the doctor to have a look at your finger. Will we try our? And remember again that the proactive strategies will have possibly created a social story. They will have been working on breathing exercises. Payam might have a preferred objects or things with her in the waiting room. And if we want to be able to use these non-functionally based reactive strategies, we have to be paying attention to the proactive strategies. On we go. So reactive strategies condition. We're interested in episodic severity and resolution. Reactive strategies are reserved solely for the important role of minimizing episodic severity. They prompt us to do more and hold the proactive strategies responsible for future effect. So you can't use these reactive strategies without the support of the proactive strategies. And the proactive strategies will also support the use of functionally based, non-functionally based, and functionally informed reactive strategies. On we go. So here's nonlinear contingency analysis. Payam comes home, goes directly to her room, throws items and furniture. Payam is supported with active listening. Payam, I'm here to spend time with you. Payam is maybe reminded to use her touch talker, spend time with me, and she's offered, hey, what will we do together? So that's using a constructional approach within a contingency analysis, but let's look at it now within a nonlinear contingency analysis. So when we use these examples, we're using them in the context of a nonlinear contingency analysis. So if you're operating as a linear contingency analysis practitioner, C would seem bizarre to you, because you would be thinking, you can't do that. And in experimental design, the linear contingency analysis practitioner would be absolutely correct. But we're not doing it in that context. We're doing this in the context of a nonlinear contingency analysis, and we're using the constructional approach. So this is really exciting, because I'm hoping that this will help you articulate this kind of conversation, because we do have colleagues and parents and people that we work with that say, oh, no, we can't do that. We'll just have mayhem. So on we go. So is the consequence reinforcing? And you will notice that the consequence could be reinforcing in that if this was happening in just a single element intervention, in a contingency, a linear contingency analysis, the answer would be yes. But because it's in a nonlinear contingency analysis, it is released of future effects, and it has permission to just look at situational effects. On we go. So I think I've talked about that. Yeah, we can keep going. And you can, we'll send out a copy of the slides. So you can see again that we're avoiding the reinforcement effects, because we've got new skills, we've got competing alternative reinforcements, we've got other naturally occurring reinforcements. However, if the data reveals that any kind of distress or increase in distress is happening, then we need to go back and have a look at the nonlinear contingency analysis. And it could actually be that the proactive strategies aren't actually being implemented. On we go. So now you can see Payam's multi-element behaviour support. So a multi-element behaviour support plan will have at a minimum 7 interventions, but some multi-element behaviour support plans could have 12 support strategies, and they're roadmaps. So we're not just going to lift all these up and pop them in. So Payam has a say in, does she like, what does she think? And I want to look at social validity just a little bit, because I think this is a nice kind of link now to organizational behavior management. So on we go. So we have goals, and they're all based around value direction. Everybody has different goals, so everybody's goals are different, but these might be some areas that we'd be prompting our practitioners to think about. Let's go on there. So for Pyan, increase time with siblings from 1 15-minute engagement a day to maybe 3 15-minute engagements based on shared interest enjoyment. Short-term goal might be to borrow an audiobook from the library once a month to listen to and read with a family member. Long-term goal might be to attend a weekly dance class in the community. Long-term goal might be the mediators, mum and dad, to learn how to write one social story using the 10 criteria of social stories. So you can see now that we're beginning to tip into mediators as well, can't you? Because we've looked at the plan, now we're looking at the mediators. So we'll skip on again. Magic should happen now, Alan, if you click on the... There we go. So let's look at the mediators, because the mediators are part of the enablers and the kind of the nest of support around the individuals that we support. So mediators are really important. So we think about those 4 questions with mediators. On we go. So where do you want to go? What are your desired outcomes? Where are you now? What are your current and relevant repertoires? How will you get from here to there? What will keep you going? So we use exactly the same approach. And in Chicago, in Israel Goldiamond's time, he had labs that actually just focused on mediator analysis, where practitioners would actually, and parents and students would all actually be looking at this in the context of nonlinear contingency analysis and reinforcements. So that's actually where Goldiamond's kind of experimental work happened, was in labs with people with lived experience, journaling and doing nonlinear contingency analysis on themselves. So really exciting stuff. On we go. So we use the periodic service review, which many of you would know. It's built on the principles of organizational behavioral management. It has 4 integrated elements. We could do many, many workshops on this, but that's a lovely textbook. If you don't have it, do let us know, because we could loan it to you. On we go. So we have performance standards, we have monitoring, we have visual feedback. The performance standards are co-written. We're thinking about social validity here. On we go. I want to just kind of show you. So it looks like a checklist, but there's definitions behind each of these. We track our pathway, so we know where we're all going together. So on we go. Process standards of what will we support as agreed with the individual, and outcome standards, what the individual chooses to lead out on. So this is really exciting, because now we're seeing social validity and we're seeing consent in the context of increased degrees of freedom. So these concepts now are all coming together. So let's have a look at what a process standard is and an outcome standard is. So this is the intervention, if you remember, increased time with siblings. This was a goal, from 1 15-minute engagement a day to 3 15-minute engagements based on a shared interest and enjoyment. So a process performance indicator is score a plus if there's a written plan which has been implemented on how Pyan can spend 15 minutes with siblings on 3 occasions each day. So that's the process. So that's us enabling this support. How about this as an outcome? Score a plus if Pyan has invited a sibling to spend time with her independently on at least 1 occasion last month. So now we're seeing true engagement. Now we're seeing true consent in the context of this floats my boat. So process and outcome, and we'll actually score these. So we can score a PSR just on process indicators, and we can also score a PSR with outcome indicators, and we can score a PSR with both. On we go. This is an example of this picture schedule. Score a plus if the picture schedule is written up, family of evidence, role play competency, and it's implemented 3 times a day. Outcome standards, score a plus if Pyan brings the picture schedule to a staff member or to a family member independently to review it on 1 occasion in the last week. Now Pyan is thinking, I'm not going places without this. We're beginning to see full engagement. On we go. Cued relaxation, you can read that. I'm conscious of time. We can just keep going. On we go again. You get the gist. So traditionally, these are the types of graphs that we would see. And the number of spent time with me, behavior support needs. So we're very mindful that Payane isn't communicating her behavior, she's communicating this. So our graphs are very respectful in the context of what would an individual like to see. And Payane is saying, I'd like people to spend time with me. So yeah, sometimes we have data that looks like this, and I'm challenging us. Is this the data that we need to be reporting on? And we know the baseline, and we can see that it goes down over time, and we're all very good at doing this. But let's move on. Let's see if we can push ourselves. We do the PSR, so we can score the PSR as process and outcome standards all together. We can separate it. We're very talented at data analysis and data recording. On we go. So what are the valued directions and valued outcomes? Let's have a look. Right, so the blue line was spend time with me. The purple line is the PSR. The orange line is spending time with a family member in the kitchen. So you can see that we've 80 minutes on average a day in the kitchen over these 23 weeks. Now, this is a vignette, but you can see that if we're serious about thinking about value direction, we can actually celebrate value direction and valued outcomes. On we go. We also use what's called the step matrix. So we randomly sample 10 activities over the last 7 days, and we're thinking about it in the context of my choice and functionality at the home, in the community, and as an active member of the community. And you can see that when we do this, we have check buns in the oven. So that was Payane's choice. Oh, sorry, that was another person's choice. Making dinner, that comes in at an 8. So you can see that that's fabulous. That's Payane's self-choice. So she's contributing to the dinner. You can see dancing with a sibling. You can see, so now we're getting kind of some of the beautiful things and moments that Payane now is actually enjoying in her life. And we can do this over time. There's lots of different ways that we can use the step matrix. And this comes from the IABA. So just to kind of wrap up, I think, let's have a look, Alan. Are we almost there? Yeah. So I suppose MEBS is really a structured model, not just for the delivery of PBS, but for the delivery of a constructional approach as a model for PBS. So MEBS is very, very unique. It ensures that together we do not miss out on the relevant aspects of a holistic view of the individual that is required in order to create an effective multi-element behaviour support plan. And if we do not include a careful examination of the individual's life history, overall life situation and quality of life when trying to understand their behaviour support, we're not a PBS practitioner. And we're definitely not using a constructional approach as articulated by Goldiamond and made explicit in the MEBS model.
Okay, fantastic. You're finished, Caroline.
I think I'm finished. Alan, am I finished?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah,
Others?
that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Great.
Absolutely amazing, Caroline. Thank you. Usually I watch continuing education at twice speed because but this one I'm going to slow down and go half speed because there's pieces of theory in there that I really never had any concept of, even though I would be emulating, I suppose, practice that I've seen over the years, and it feels intuitively correct to do it this way. I really hadn't grasped Goldiamond's multiple sets and multiple contingencies previously. So that's again something new that I have come out of today. I don't know. I don't see any questions in the chat, Alan. Do you?
No, there's no questions in the chat. Just one last thing, though. There is a feedback form in the chat, so we'd be very grateful if people could click on that. And a CPD form will be issued if you complete that, if you need one for your records.
Fantastic. Absolute masterclass again, Caroline. Thank you so much on behalf of everybody at ISPA.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.